How would you react if you discovered wild boar tracks around your farm? I once thought everything was over after the previous time setting traps. But I couldn't have imagined that very night, the wild boars would return in even greater numbers. A frightening thought crossed my mind. They had come back to take revenge for their own kind. But no matter what, if I didn't act immediately with this level of destruction, the entire farm would be wiped out in just a few nights. I would set traps and take them all down. I didn't have much time. If this herd had returned for revenge, they would come back again. And next time, it could be even worse. I began scanning the entire area around the farm, trails, fresh footprints, patches of ground that had just been torn up. Just by looking, I could already determine their paths and habits. And if I wanted to stop them, I had to stay one step ahead. I carried all my equipment and moved to each position I had identified beforehand. At the western forest edge, I set up the first trap right along the trail. Fresh footprints were still clearly visible in the soil. I didn't waste time, secured the trap frame, checked the trigger mechanism, then began spreading bait. The scent of food spread quickly through the damp night air. That night, we continued installing more traps scattered around the area. Once everything was done, we left, returning the silence for the boars to come. The next morning, we came back. As I approached the first trap, I froze. Inside the cage was a group of wild boars crammed together, panicking, constantly slamming into the metal bars. And that was only the first one. But the second trap, everything went far beyond what I had imagined. The moment we got closer, the crashing sounds came in rapid bursts. The boars inside reacted far more violently. They weren't just panicking, they were almost going mad. Each powerful impact slammed against the iron frame, making the entire cage shake violently. At times, it felt like it could burst open at any moment. The larger one stood in front, repeatedly charging at the trapdoor as if trying to break it. Behind them, others pushed and trampled over each other, forming a chaotic, uncontrollable mass. The tension in the air rose instantly. We had to keep our distance. The third trap was what truly made me stop in my tracks. From quite a distance, I could already hear the noise. No longer just scattered impacts, but a continuous, heavy, chaotic sound, as if something was trying to break free at all costs. As I got closer, I could hardly believe my eyes. Inside the cage was a number of wild boars so large that it was completely packed. They were pressed tightly against one another, filling every corner, leaving no space at all. The ones near the front kept slamming into the metal frame, while those behind were forced upward, creating immense pressure on the entire trap. At the fourth trap, everything suddenly became quieter. There were no violent impacts, no chaotic noise like the previous traps. Inside the cage were adult boars, not overly large, but still strong enough to be dangerous if handled carelessly. The final trap surprised me in a different way. As I approached, I realized there were almost no adults inside. All of them were young wild boars, smaller in size, faster in movement, constantly squeezing against one another in the confined space. They weren't big enough to deliver the powerful blows of adults, but they were far from harmless. On the contrary, they were the biggest problem because all of them were future threats to my farm. After checking all the traps, I stood still and looked over the entire area. The number of wild boars caught was greater than ever before, from aggressive adults to young ones that hadn't even grown yet. Each trap revealed a different problem, and after everything I'd seen, I knew this would not be the last time.
You might think this is a nature reserve, but it's not. This is Rome, the capital of Italy. These wild boar families are strolling through crowded neighborhoods as if they were the true owners of the streets. With an estimated population in the millions across Italy, wild boars are rapidly losing their fear of humans. Urban waste has become an easy food source, turning them into a serious threat to traffic safety and daily urban life. What's happening in Rome is a preview of what many suburban areas around the world are beginning to face, as the boundary between city and countryside slowly disappears. So, what's the answer to this growing problem? Instead of mass culling, many countries are choosing more sustainable population management strategies. Most notably, live capture trapping followed by professional handling. One of the most effective tools is the vertical guillotine-style trap. To outsmart such an intelligent animal, experts scatter corn and sweet potatoes along established trails for several days. This builds familiarity and a sense of safety before the trap is ever activated. Take a close look at the trap's design. The frame is welded from heavy-duty angle steel and round bars, strong enough to withstand the full force of an adult boar's charge. The guillotine door hangs above the entrance and, once triggered, drops straight down along steel rails, sealing the trap in a split second. Using either manual pull systems or remote triggers, operators aim to capture the entire sounder. not just individual animals. The door is only activated once the whole group is fully inside. This method prevents scattered survivors from learning, adapting, and returning to cause more trouble later. While box traps work well for smaller groups, areas with heavy wild boar pressure require a more flexible solution, the corral trap. With its large open space, this trap allows for mass capture without making the animals feel cornered, reducing panic and stress. Corral traps are typically set in pastures, forest edges, or heavily damaged agricultural zones. Thanks to their ability to capture entire herds in a single operation, corral traps are considered one of the most effective tools for large-scale wild boar management, protecting crops while meeting humane standards. Another option includes open-top enclosures that create a sense of openness, lowering the boar's natural suspicion. The key lies in the door systems, either one-way entrances or remotely triggered gates, allowing the entire herd to enter freely before closure. Choosing the right trap, placing it in the right location, and activating it at the right moment are critical to success. Not every situation requires herd capture. For isolated boars appearing in gardens, farms, or residential yards, single catch traps offer a simple and cost-effective solution. While they're not suitable for population explosions, they're highly effective for protecting individual properties. From simple cage traps to complex corral systems, each method plays a specific role in an overall wildlife management strategy. Whether the goal is protecting crops, neighborhoods, or ecosystems, the common thread is restoring balance between humans and nature. After a successful capture, the next step is safe handling and transport. Since large traps are usually fixed in place, wild boars are guided into smaller transfer cages, reducing struggle and minimizing injury risk. Depending on local wildlife regulations, suitable animals may be relocated to controlled zones, while others are handled using approved humane methods. As transport trucks roll away from residential areas, peace is restored for local communities, bringing a responsible control operation to a close. These traps are more than technical tools. They're proof that humans can learn to coexist with wildlife, rather than constantly confront it. In suburban areas, controlling wild boars isn't about using the strongest trap. It's about using the right tool for the right situation. When intervention is timely and well-planned, conflict can be prevented before it turns into a crisis. That's how communities can live more safely alongside a changing natural world.
In many rural areas of the United States, wild boars are no longer just a potential threat. They have become an urgent problem for agricultural production. They destroy crops, damage infrastructure, and force farmers to constantly find ways to fight back. But what worries wildlife managers the most is not only the scale of destruction, but the incredibly fast way these animals adapt to traditional control methods. Local authorities have decided to adopt a new mindset in wildlife control. Instead of managing one animal at a time, the most effective approach today is managing the entire sound. This method is not about catching more, but about breaking the behavioral structure of the whole group in the shortest amount of time. The key lies in three factors: clearly understanding wild boar movement patterns, attracting them naturally without causing panic, and handling the entire group at the same time instead of individually like before. This approach helps reduce numbers quickly, limits their ability to adapt, and creates long-term effectiveness for farmland. The solution chosen by most Americans is the Jaeger Pro Hog Trap. This trap is considered a more advanced and effective large-scale trapping solution compared to many traditional traps. The Jaeger Pro Trap is set up by installing a panel system surrounding the target area, combined with an automatic gate system to create a clear guided space. The panels are firmly secured and arranged along familiar movement routes to ensure the target moves directly into the trap. The installation is done step by step to make sure the entire trap structure is stable and ready for operation. Unlike manual traps, this entire system is designed for simultaneous trapping, precise, controlled, and remotely managed. After the frame is completed, the gate system and activation mechanism are carefully tested to ensure accurate response when triggered. The gates must close at the same time and fast enough to prevent wild boars from escaping. This testing phase plays an important role in minimizing technical errors and increasing capture efficiency. This type of trap does not rely on force or quick reflexes like older methods. It works based on three principles. Instead of creating pressure, the trap is designed as a neutral behavioral zone where the sounder can move, feed, and interact normally over multiple cycles. This allows the system to fully record the behavior of the entire group before making the decision to trigger the trap. Behavior recognition. Instead of activating when one animal appears, the system only makes the decision when the entire sounder has gathered, including the lead sow and the younger pigs, and when they no longer show signs of caution or hesitation. When the right moment arrives, the trap mechanism is activated in an instant, giving the sounder no time to react and no chance to escape. Right before the trap gate closes, everything looks completely normal. The entire sounder lowers their heads to feed, moving slowly, and none of them show any signs of alertness. Then, in just a split second, the trap gate drops all at once, a clean, decisive sound, with no chasing at all. The pigs barely have time to understand what happened before the entire group is already enclosed inside the trap. It is exactly this perfect timing and complete surprise that keeps every individual contained, while other sounders receive no warning signals at all. As a result, future avoidance behavior does not develop. This is the core advantage that older methods struggle to achieve. Not allowing a single animal to escape, carrying the memory of danger, is exactly why this system can be reused for a long time in the same way. Immediately after the trap is activated, the top priority is keeping the sounder stable and reducing stress as much as possible. The space is tightly controlled but still well ventilated, and the animals are quickly observed to ensure there are no serious injuries. Transport is carried out using specialized vehicles, moving in a stable and controlled way. In wild boar management, what happens after a successful trap is just as important as the trapping itself, because even one small mistake can turn into a major risk. In the United States, wild boar control is not simply a reaction, it is part of sustainable agricultural management. The principles placed first include following the law, complying with local regulations, prioritizing humane methods, and aiming for long-term protection of crops and ecosystems. When done correctly, not only do farmers benefit, but the natural environment also becomes more balanced. The most effective solution does not lie in rushed action, but in building a strategy that matches the natural behavior of wild boars. When approached correctly, sounder-based control not only protects crops in the short term, but also brings long-term stability to agriculture and the ecosystem. I've lived in Columbus, Georgia for more than 20 years, and I never thought there would come a day when I'd have to guard my farm like a battlefield. Everything started with just a few strange tracks in the field. I ignored them until the next morning when the entire crop was torn apart as if a storm had ripped through overnight. Then they came back, not one, but an entire herd of wild hogs. They smashed fences, tore up the soil, and trampled the harvest I'd spent months caring for. And I realized one thing: if I didn't stop them right now, I was going to lose everything. The first traps were set right along the forest edge, where the hogs usually poured out each night. Not placed randomly, not done in haste. Every location was carefully studied, based on the herd's familiar travel routes. But trapping only at the edge was not enough. Deeper inside the forest, more zones began to be secured as well. Transit points, trails, resting spots, feeding grounds, all of it was gradually brought into the control system. A network was taking shape. We split into teams. Each person was given a role. Everything moved quickly. Once the traps were in place, technology entered the operation. Motion sensor cameras were installed. Automatic target recognition systems recorded every animal that appeared. Every movement was tracked. Every time the herd returned, we had data. No more guessing. No more passive reactions. Everything now was under our control. And after a period of monitoring, we kept bait inside while the trap doors remained open, watching everything through our devices. When the moment came and the whole herd naturally gathered inside to feed, I looked at my father and knew everything was ready. The decisive moment had arrived. Just one button. The enclosed system activated instantly. Escape routes were blocked almost at the same time. No gaps, no way back. Bang! The drop gate slammed shut with incredible speed. Inside, the wild hogs immediately fell into panic. They scattered, spun in circles, searched every direction for a way out. But every path led to the same ending. A closed circle, no matter how intelligent they were. They gradually lost all sense of direction. Within minutes, the resistance began to fade. No more desperate charges. No more clear attempts to escape. The entire herd was contained inside the trap system. It was over. I looked at my father, and everyone there let out a breath of relief. That same night, reports came in from every other trap we had placed. They had all been triggered, capturing many more targets waiting for their chance to destroy farms and neighborhoods. No one needed to say anything, but everyone understood. After that night, the whole community would finally sleep in peace, no longer fearing their crops would be ruined again. But the most important thing was never the trap. It was the way the community chose to act. The individuals causing the greatest damage were selected first and dealt with through humane, swift, and carefully controlled methods. No chaos, no extremism, just responsible action to avoid unnecessary panic for the animals while bringing real economic relief to local families. This approach was never about wiping them out entirely, but about reducing risk while still respecting ecological balance. And it was true. After that night, silence returned. No more tangled tracks every morning. No more torn up soil after every dark night. But what truly changed was the way people faced the problem. No more rushed reactions. No more isolated efforts. Instead, observe, understand, then act at the right moment. Because in situations like this, the most important decision is not how fast you act, is whether you have enough patience to wait for the right time. We are a rapid response wildlife control team operating in the state of Texas. The uninvited guests only show up after the sun goes down. They move in groups, tearing up underground irrigation systems and ripping through topsoil in search of roots. Yes, feral hogs. The ranch owner had tried everything, but these animals are too smart. They learn fast, they adapt, and they always find the weak point. That's when we get called in. First rule, shut down all current deterrents. No noise, no small cage traps, no hunting dogs. We need the sounder to believe this place is no longer a threat. The first location sits deep in the woods. Dense grass, limited visibility. At 7:22 p.m., the camera pings. The automatic feeder has done its job. A group moves in. I watch through the live feed. No other wildlife. No stray livestock. This is it. The gate drops fast. So fast they don't even realize they're trapped until it's already over. Then comes the chaos. Panic erupts inside the trap. Bodies collide. Steel echoes through the forest. For a brief moment, the entire area feels like it's shaking. And then, control. The second sight is wide and open. Bait is concentrated at the center. At exactly 7:37 p.m., the second group arrives. This time, I have to be more careful. Open terrain means higher risk. If anyone or any vehicle passes through, I must delay the drop. But the area stays clear. Not a second wasted. I trigger the system remotely. Two 12-foot gates slam down in perfect sync. But the third location, that's the real test. A large sounder. They circle for a long time. The smaller ones enter first. The bigger ones stay out, watching, calculating. I stay locked in my seat, eyes fixed on the phone screen. Not a second away. My heartbeat rises. Breathing tightens. It takes until 2 a.m. Patience pays off. The entire group is finally inside, feeding under the soft glow of infrared. I send the command. The gates drop. Instant chaos. The sheer number of animals makes the steel enclosure shake violently in the night. But once the lock engages, not a single one gets out. What looks like a clean result in one night isn't luck. It's a complete shift in strategy. Phase 1 is always scouting and setup. We identify travel routes, habitual paths, and place monitoring stations discreetly. Once locations are confirmed, it's time to choose the trap. We don't do things the old way anymore. Too slow, too costly, too risky. We use modern modular corral systems. With this setup, one person can deploy rigid panels, lock them in place, and raise a 12-foot heavy-duty drop gate using a manual winch. All in under 20 minutes. The key is speed. The gate drops instantly. The goal isn't just to catch some, it's to contain all. Once the structure is up, we install the system. One automatic feeder inside, one solar-powered ICE camera mounted high from that moment on. Everything runs remotely, 24/7 through a smartphone. Anywhere, anytime. When a camera confirms the entire sounder is inside, one tap sends a signal. The gate drops immediately, and if a person or livestock enters the area, we delay. No panic, no risk. Everything is controlled down to the second. Wildlife control isn't about force or luck. It's about strategy, technology, and understanding animal behavior. With remote systems and real-time monitoring, we remove unnecessary human interference, ensure maximum safety for the surrounding environment, and solve the problem at its root. By daylight, this field may still look normal, but after just one night, by the next morning, the soil has been torn apart in patches, roots ripped upward, empty spaces left behind as if something passed through and swept away every ounce of hard work. What worries them is not only the scale of destruction, but the fact that it returns almost every night, consistent, relentless, and unpredictable. And that is the sign that if no action is taken in time, an entire harvest could disappear. That is exactly why our team is here again, to install traps strong enough and solid enough to hold the line. Without wasting time, we completed the first net trap that same day on the southern edge of the forest. Before long, it gave its first signal. One boar had been caught inside, but instead of staying contained, it reacted violently, charging straight into the netted gate again and again. The mesh stretched tight, shaking wildly with every impact. The decision was made immediately after that. We would not dismantle the old trap, but we would no longer rely on this type of system. At once, on the northern side of the forest, where the terrain was tighter and more enclosed, a different setup was built, a steel door trap. Heavier frame, stronger locks, a gravity drop gate that did not depend on tension like netting. It only needed to be strong enough to withstand a direct hit from a herd of wild boars. When everything was ready, we waited in silence for nightfall. The tension in the air was so thick that no one said a word. Then the first movement appeared. The smell of bait quickly drew in the herd. And when the moment came, when every last one had stepped inside, click, the trigger was activated. The gate dropped shut. Inside, several boars reacted instantly. They burst into frantic motion, searching for an escape. But every direction was sealed. Metal rang out in sharp beats. Short, clean, final. We looked at one another. For the first time, the trap had worked exactly as intended. At another point near the forest edge, the reinforced trap set by Tom did not take long to activate either. Though it caught only a few, it would still reduce the damage to this season's crops for the local farmers. Once the trap was sprung, the boars tried to escape by instinct. But that was impossible. They had been fully contained inside the solid structure we had spent so much effort preparing. And did not stop there. Texas is home to more than 3 million feral hogs. So together with landowners, we often place traps like these out in the fields. The trap in this area became another hotspot, stirring up noise at the edge of the woods. When large, powerful boars were found contained inside, it proved one thing clearly. The system was working exactly as we had planned. Every time a trap was triggered, we did not rush to celebrate. But at the very least, everyone felt a little more at ease. The traps continued to be reinforced. We continued the control operation. This time, we were determined to catch every last one, to leave them no chance to damage this area again. Every year, our state of Texas alone suffers around $400, $500 million in economic losses caused by wild hogs. This final night was considered the decisive one. Once again, we took our positions, held our breath, and waited. At the first trap, the herd had grown larger. Not only adults, but smaller ones as well entered the enclosure. The space inside began to tighten. Then, at the perfect moment, the trap let out a chilling clack. Instantly, movement inside became faster, more violent, more desperate. Heavy blows slammed into the steel frame. Metal rang out sharply. Others circled and shoved. The entire trap shook in waves. But this time, just like the night before, not a single one escaped. We kept watching, kept waiting, and then everything reached its peak. A massive herd appeared, not scattered individuals anymore, but a dense, moving flood. They fed greedily on the bait scattered across the ground until BM, the gate crashed down. At once, the trap exploded with noise inside. Feet pounding the dirt, steel bars rattling without pause. And in that moment, we understood more clearly than ever. If the trap system had not been strong enough, everything would have burst apart. The next morning, we did not dismantle the trap right away, because we knew there was still more out there, and we were right. Another large herd had been caught just before dawn. When we walked past, they became even more agitated. Several slammed into the steel frame so hard the entire trap shook repeatedly. And do you know what was inside that cage? The very reason those fields have been destroyed for weeks. As everything gradually came under control, the farm grew quiet again. No more fresh tracks each morning. No more furrows torn open after every night. This was not a hunt. This was the only way to save the harvest. Because once wild boars discover a stable food source, they do not stop on their own. In situations like this, what do you think matters more? A trap strong enough, or the patience to wait for the perfect moment? Leave your thoughts below. We are members of a wild hog control team in Oklahoma, and at Twin Eagle Ranch, there is no room for mistakes. More than 1,000 hectares of farmland are being destroyed day by day, fields torn apart, irrigation systems shattered, young corn and soybean sprouts wiped out in a single night. This is no longer a small problem. This is a fight for the survival of an entire harvest, and we do not rely on brute force, but on strategy. The screen of the Hawkeye camera we placed beside 3 big pig traps along the forest edge suddenly lit up. The hogs were in position. The bait, rooting juice, a mix of rotten cheese scent and sweet corn, was doing its job. 1:57 a.m. Dark shadows quietly entered the trap zone. No sound, no sign of suspicion. Wait a little longer. One more. Now, I hit the button. The round trap gate slammed shut. Instantly, the silence was ripped apart by the dry clang of metal striking metal. The hogs inside panicked, hurling themselves into the steel frame with such force that the whole area seemed to shake. The chaos lasted for several minutes before they finally realized they were completely trapped. To make sure nothing had gone wrong, we jumped into the Jeep Gladiator that same night and sped down the dirt trails. When the headlights hit the trap, the scene became crystal clear. The entire sounder, including hogs weighing over 200 pounds, had been captured. After the forestage area had been disturbed, the hogs began shifting toward lower ground. To block their movement, I decided to set 2 additional octagon-style traps near the livestock pens. It was a narrow position directly along the trail they regularly used to reach water. Fresh rooting marks in the soil proved this had become the new hotspot. 9:21 p.m. The screen vibrated with movement. A large group entered. They sniffed, tested every steel bar. The tension weighed on every second. My hand stayed on the trigger button. Not too early, not too late. I held my breath. This is the moment. Press it. The steel frame shook violently. The hogs inside lost all sense of direction, crashing into one another in the darkness while their bodies slammed against the steel mesh. The chaos peaked before they slowly exhausted themselves and were locked in tight. Less than 2 hours later, at 10:50 p.m., the second trap alerted. This group was more cautious, just as they seemed to sense something was wrong. I activated the trap in time. 2 sounders. One night. Full control. Deep in the woods is where the large boars usually hide during the day. There, I used a reinforced box trap built with a specially strengthened steel frame. Through the camera, I watched them circle outside. They inspected everything, moved around again and again. I did not rush. Patience is the only weapon that matters. When the whole group was fully inside the zone, I triggered it. The gate dropped shut. Hogs weighing more than 250 pounds went wild, smashing into the walls of the trap with deafening force. Panic swallowed the entire group until they understood every effort was useless. They had fallen into a trap calculated down to the inch. After the hogs were secured, we handled the site safely and efficiently. The muddy ground after the rain unexpectedly worked in our favor, making it easier to drag the heavy animals thanks to the slick surface. We used a trailer and truck combination to move the load. Once finished, the hogs were divided into 2 parts. One portion sent to a professional processing facility. The rest donated to local families to prepare as food themselves. Everything ended cleanly, restoring peace to the ranch. This is not a numbers game. This is a battle of minds. Observation, patience, perfect timing. One small mistake, and everything falls apart. But when everything works exactly as planned, we do not just catch wild hogs. We take back the fields. Recently, the fields have no longer been as peaceful as before. By day, everything still looks green and thriving, but after just one night, the soil is torn apart, plants bitten through, an entire corner of the garden turned into a battlefield. Overlapping footprints of all sizes, this isn't one animal, but a whole herd. There was no other choice. We had to act, not to hunt, but to protect the crops, to protect livelihoods. The traps were set the evening before. Bait was placed along their familiar paths. Everything was carefully prepared, and what happened overnight meant that at first light today, our priority was to check the traps. The first cage appeared at the edge of the field. Inside was a small group. We quickly noticed something. Their fur wasn't the same, black, brown, even striped. This wasn't random. It showed that multiple groups had merged, a sign the herd was growing, expanding its range. Give it a few more weeks, and this place would become their permanent feeding ground. Inside the cage, they pressed together, breathing heavily, unable to escape. We moved to another trap. Some of the boars inside reacted violently. They slammed their heads into the steel frame again and again. Others behaved differently, slipping to the side, using their snouts to probe each bar, searching for the smallest gap to break free. This is something many people overlook. Not every animal reacts the same way. The steel bars rattled, echoing sharp metallic clangs. This was no longer feeding behavior. This was survival instinct. In another corner, a smaller trap had also been triggered. Inside was a single adult and a few juveniles. The confined space prevented them from gaining momentum or coordinating like they could in the open. This is the key point. You don't need a large trap. Just the right placement is enough to hold even the strongest animal. The result from last night made one thing clear. The traps worked, not by chance, but through careful calculation, placing traps along movement paths, dividing positions, baiting according to the herd's habits. But we couldn't stop yet. The traps remained. The bait was replenished. Tonight will be the next test. Slam. The trap door dropped shut. Both were caught, thrashing inside. A good sign. The herd was beginning to lose its caution at the first point. Not long after, at another trap set nearby, a different adult appeared, larger, more cautious. It circled, paused, stepped back, then moved forward along the bait trail. The moment it stepped inside, slam, the second trap snapped shut. Chaos erupted inside, with its size and behavior. We assessed it as a dangerous individual, likely a dominant, experienced animal that had been causing repeated damage in the area. The final outcome of the night came at another trap point. Two were already caught inside. They continued to panic, slamming repeatedly against the steel frame. But outside, a few others had already sensed something was wrong. They didn't move in, just a split second of hesitation. Then they turned and bolted, disappearing into the deep forest. The sound faded into the distance, leaving behind a trap still trembling. And this is something we have to accept. No trapping system is 100% effective. The goal is to break the herd, to reduce the destruction they bring to the crops. The next morning, we returned together to check the traps. At one cage, several were still held inside. One kept jumping, throwing its full weight upward. Clang! It tried to smash against the top of the cage, but it was useless. Trying to escape, but couldn't. The next steps were carried out quickly and efficiently. We secured the cages, transported all the boars out of the farming area, ensuring they would not return to destroy another night. Everything was done according to proper procedures and legal regulations. The final stage, we proceeded with humane handling in full compliance with legal guidelines. No prolonging, no display, just what had to be done. This is not hunting. This is how farmers protect their crops, protect the work of their own hands. What do you think about this approach? As wild boar damage becomes more severe, what other choices do farmers really have? As a field coordinator with the Arizona Wild Boar Rapid Response Team, I have faced countless critical situations, but the chain of events that unfolded recently on the suburban edge still stays with me. Heavy steel structures shook violently. The ground trembled beneath the force of tons of muscle. It all began when cornfields were flattened, driving wild boars out of the fields and into residential areas. 8 a.m., an emergency video was sent to the control center. In the middle of a busy street, an aggressive wild boar suddenly charged out and attacked a pedestrian head-on. It was violent, terrifying, and unbelievably fast. After the dangerous animal was brought under control, our immediate assessment was clear. Food sources in the nearby dry hills had likely been exhausted, forcing the boars down into the neighborhood in search of food. The situation was critical. I ordered all trail access points sealed and launched a full-scale control operation on the hillside above the town. Before any trap could be placed, the technical team spent hours tracking signs. Fresh hoof prints in soft mud, tree bark torn apart, deep rooting marks along the forest edge. Everything pointed to the presence of a large sounder. Once the movement route was confirmed, I authorized deployment of a hexagonal drop trap built with a reinforced steel frame. Size: 6.6 feet, 9.8 feet, built as a reconnaissance setup. To test reactions and estimate the density of the lead group. 11:24 p.m., the camera captured 2 boars, each around 88 pounds, entering the center zone. I immediately triggered the trap. The gate dropped. Both targets were secured cleanly. But through the infrared screen, I could still see larger shadows lingering outside the perimeter. They were too cautious to enter such a tight enclosure. We had moved too quickly. I changed tactics. This time, a box trap made from high-strength aluminum alloy. Size: 4.9 feet, 8.2 feet, fully enclosed, designed to deceive visual suspicion. The target now was not the whole group, but oversized solitary boars with aggressive behavior. Those are the individuals posing the most immediate threat to nearby residents. Around 2 a.m., a giant boar appeared. Estimated weight: nearly 660 pounds. It stepped inside cautiously, then began devouring the fermented corn bait. The trap was triggered. The beast was locked inside. It slammed wildly against the aluminum walls, creating violent metallic crashes. The final solution was deployed: the circular elevated trap, diameter 32.8-foot frame, heavy tubular steel covered with ultra-durable mesh. The entire system was suspended 3.9 feet above the ground by electric winch cables. Its open design made the boars drop their guard. We spread fermented grain in a wide circle beneath the center of the trap. At the transition zone between the hills and town, the giant black trap finally showed movement. Around 10 boars entered in a crowded rush. They shoved, competed, and fed greedily, completely unaware that the trap was already waiting above them. Once the entire group was inside, I pressed the remote trigger. The steel frame dropped free. The system locked instantly. The whole sounder was contained inside the circular barrier. Everything seemed calm until the next morning. Around 8 a.m., one of my teammates called in urgently and told me to check the camera feed immediately. I could hardly believe what I saw. A dense group of wild boars had entered the smaller trap. This version was smaller than the black trap from the night before, but the results were astonishing. I triggered it immediately. No chance to escape. The boars ran in panic, circling desperately, searching for a gap. But the steel structure had sealed every exit. The direct threat to the residential area was officially removed. We loaded into the Land Rover Defender and headed straight to the site. A pickup truck was backed carefully against the trap gate. Using a long guiding pole, we directed each animal into the transport vehicle one by one in an orderly way, minimizing panic as much as possible. In cases where an individual was excessively aggressive and posed immediate danger to the team, humane on-site action was taken to ensure total safety. Watching each animal brought under control and loaded out, a deep sense of relief spread across the team.
Yep.
Controlling wild boars is a test of patience and strategy. From reading signs in the dirt to adapting trap systems in real time, every move must be calculated. Only by understanding their behavior and how they react can we intervene effectively and restore peace to the community.